were fitness influencers before Zyzz. There were athletes with incredible physiques, and there were people who had spent years training in silence. But Zyzz understood something incredibly important. People didn't just want to look at a great body. They wanted to see someone who had turned fitness into an entire lifestyle. He appeared on the internet at a time when social media was only beginning to transform into a massive platform for self-expression. And instead of simply posting boring workout reports, Zyzz created something completely different. A confident, stylish, energetic persona who trained, traveled, enjoyed life, took photographs, and showed young people a completely new way of looking at fitness. And that is why people didn't love him simply because of his muscles, because Zyzz wasn't really selling a physique. He was selling a feeling of life, a feeling that you could change yourself, become more confident, look better, and stop being the person who simply watches other people live. He became a symbol for an entire generation, and his photographs, videos, personality, and famous image continued to exist even after his death, turning an ordinary young man into a figure the internet still hasn't forgotten. But why exactly did Zyzz create such a powerful connection with millions of people? And why, so many years later, does his name still appear whenever people talk about fitness, motivation, and the modern male image? Today, we're going to break down why everyone loved Zyzz. To understand the phenomenon of Zyzz, you have to imagine the internet of the early 2010s, when fitness content looked completely different from today, when there wasn't an endless stream of short videos showing workouts, transformations, and fitness influencers, and when someone could become famous largely through photographs, forums, YouTube, and the rapidly growing world of social media. This was the period when Zyzz began transforming from an ordinary young man into an internet phenomenon, because his appearance immediately stood out. But more importantly, he didn't look like a professional bodybuilder who existed solely for the stage. He looked like a young man who had a good physique, style, confidence, and an energy that made people pay attention. His physique was developed enough to be impressive, but his image still felt accessible to an ordinary young person who could look at a picture of Zyzz and think, not, "That's impossible," but "I can start training and change myself too." And this became one of his biggest advantages, because Zyzz didn't simply tell young people to exercise, he made them want to exercise. A young man could see one of his photographs, look at his physique, his confidence, and his lifestyle, and then walk into a gym for the first time, buy some gym clothes, and begin working on himself, because Zyzz transformed fitness from a boring obligation into a part of an attractive lifestyle. For countless young people, this became their first introduction to fitness culture through the internet, and that is why his influence was much greater than what can be understood by simply looking at the amount of muscle on his body. He became one of the symbols of the moment when fitness began moving beyond the walls of gyms and becoming part of internet culture, where physique, style, photographs, music, travel, and personality could all merge into one recognizable identity. And perhaps the most remarkable part is that Zyzz achieved this before the modern fitness influencer industry became what it is today, which is why many people didn't see him simply as another blogger. They saw him as one of the first true internet fitness icons.
If Zyzz had possessed nothing more than a good physique, we probably wouldn't still be talking about him today, because the internet has seen thousands of people with incredible bodies who became popular for a few months before completely disappearing from public memory. But Zyzz possessed something that cannot be built through training alone: charisma. And that charisma could turn an ordinary photograph into an image people wanted to remember. He could be standing beside a swimming pool, walking through a city, relaxing on a beach, training in a gym, or simply looking into a camera, yet almost every appearance created the feeling that the person in front of the viewer was completely confident in himself and knew exactly what he wanted from life. For young people, this was especially powerful because many of them didn't simply see a great physique when they looked at Zyzz. They saw an alternative version of themselves, one that was more confident, stronger, more social, and seemingly more free. He showed that fitness didn't have to be nothing more than an attempt to build bigger arms or lose body fat, but could become a way of completely changing how you saw yourself and how other people saw you. That is why his photographs spread far beyond the fitness community, because people who had never cared about bodybuilding could see one of his images, become fascinated by the personality behind it, and remember the name even without being interested in the sport itself. He created an atmosphere of movement, workouts, music, travel, friends, parties, beaches, cars, and a constant desire to look better, all of it coming together into a lifestyle that seemed incredibly attractive to a young person searching for something more. And this is one of the biggest reasons for his popularity. Zyzz didn't force people to love bodybuilding. He made them want to become a better version of themselves. Even someone who didn't care about bodybuilding competitions could look at Zyzz and think that it was time to start training, improve their appearance, become more confident, and stop postponing their life until tomorrow. Of course, his image was idealized, and social media showed only a fraction of the reality behind his life, but that ability to create a dream was exactly what made him such a powerful internet personality. He became more than a man with a good physique. He became a visual symbol of youth, confidence, freedom, and self-improvement, while his hairstyle, clothing, physique, and attitude became elements that thousands of people tried to recreate. And this is the paradox of Zyzz. He motivated people to train not because he spent hours explaining discipline, but because his image itself created the desire to change.
The most remarkable part of Zyzz's story is that his influence didn't disappear with him because the internet continued changing. New platforms appeared, new influencers emerged, and new fitness icons took over the spotlight. Yet his photographs continued circulating, old videos continued being watched, and his name continued appearing among people who weren't even around during the peak of his popularity. This happened because Zyzz became part of a specific moment in internet history, a moment when young people were beginning to search for fitness motivation not in magazines or television programs, but directly from individuals who were sharing their lives online. And Zyzz happened to be in the right place at the right time, but it would be a mistake to say that his popularity was simply luck, because without his charisma, appearance, confidence, and ability to create an entire atmosphere around himself, he would never have become so recognizable. He understood something that would later become the foundation of the modern fitness influencer industry. People don't only follow results, they follow people. That is why his audience wanted to see more than workouts, because they wanted to see the travel, friends, everyday life, photographs, clothing, music, and everything else that made up Zyzz's persona, because they weren't simply interested in how he trained. They wanted to know what it would feel like to live his life. For many young people, he became one of the first personalities who made fitness feel less like something reserved for professional athletes and more like part of modern culture, where a good physique could represent confidence, discipline, and the desire to become a better version of yourself. Yes, his lifestyle should not be treated as a perfect example of health, and not every decision he made in pursuit of his physique should be romanticized. But one thing cannot be denied: his influence on youth fitness culture was enormous.
He inspired countless people to walk into a gym for the first time, begin exercising, and pay attention to their own bodies, while his image became a bridge between ordinary young people and a fitness culture that had previously seemed distant to many of them. And perhaps that is why Zyzz is still remembered differently from many other internet personalities, because his popularity didn't end when his activity did. Instead, his image became a memory of an entire era, a time when one young man could change the way millions of people looked at fitness without having the modern tools that seem almost essential to every major influencer today. He wasn't the first person with an impressive physique, and he wasn't the only person who motivated people to train, but he became one of the first to combine fitness, style, charisma, and internet culture into a single identity that was far more powerful than ordinary fitness motivation. And that is why people loved Zyzz, not only because of his muscles, not only because of his photographs, and not even only because of his motivation, but because of the feeling he created, the feeling that you could change yourself and eventually become someone you could be proud of. And perhaps that is exactly why his name continues to live on years later, because a true internet legend isn't defined by the number of followers they had, but by how many people decided to change their own lives because they saw you change yours.